All right. Another thing that got left out. Any of you people out there on cable, if your intention is to continue to give us trouble, not only can we go back to playing Exercise for the Angry, and me remind you what I have done here. I destroyed the set we had, and I run off those people that showed up in those little fancy-antsy tights, and we're going to smile and bop around and do exercise like they enjoyed it. We thought of something else. Not only that, and now wreck the set here, we can come out, we know who you are because you're signed for cable, we'll come out and wreck your house, and if we do put it back on the air, instead of that kind of bouncy music, I've already broken the machine, but we'll get another one, we're going to play Wagner as the background. So that, like a 30-minute workout show, will last 30 hours. No offense to you Germans or you late classical era music lovers, because I've already covered that years ago. Kyroots, no, it was Kyroots did it. He said, don't ever get on an expressway named the Wagner Expressway. Because he said, although you may make good time, you never get anywhere. I don't know what that means. I'm repeating. But you got a little funny because, as many of you know, there is a Bruckner Expressway. Isn't it in Queens? Going in downtown Manhattan? Of course, that's not the same. Just because you can get someone on an expressway named after Bruckner does not follow necessarily that. Here we go. Before I get into the Kyroots, I was going to try and pull a few more things together. Would you consider to use the great world, not just of humans and meteorologists and economists, how about the wonderful world of insects? There are ants, certain brands of ants. I think it's mainly in the army ant field, but at any rate, there are ants, as some of you may know, that as they travel and they are going to stop temporarily for whatever reason, they will, hanging from limbs and leaves, they will hang on to one another and build a structure for whatever length of time, overnight or whatever they're doing. The queen gets tired. They will build, hanging on to one another, they build structures out of themselves. That there it is, they're still alive, they're awake, and they're holding on to one another, and they build what amounts to just, like a little cocoon. Anyway, it's a structure protecting primarily the queen and whatever's going on in the internal business, and they will stay there for a length of time, and it is serving in such a way that I could not resist pointing out to you that it is beyond even human institutions and other sitting duck parables and metaphors, is you can look at the secondary world of man, comparable to that, in two ways. It exists for itself and it exists to contain itself. And it is singular. It is, there may be something comparable to the ant, so don't worry, it's not a lesson in zoology by any means. But consider that it is unique compared to man, that the beings themselves, those things alive, in this case the ants, build a protective structure out of nothing but themselves. We don't have anything comparable at the physical level, the physiological or physical level of humans. Anything a human does to protect itself, the human organism, is certainly not built out of itself, because if it could do that, you wouldn't need a house. You wouldn't need clothes. Anything that you build to protect yourself is extrinsic. It is not you. But consider just for a moment, at least I glossed over it too quickly, living organisms, the ants, and they build this structure to contain and protect themselves as a whole, as a collective. But it's built out of themselves, nothing else, just them. Now consider the secondary world, not the physical world of man, not the primary, but the secondary world of man in all of its fullness, the intellectual world. Everything that is not of the physical, not limited to the primary world, his cultural world, his artistic world, his religious, his political, everything. Look at the secondary world exists not only for the sake of itself, but for the sake of containing itself. That, if you ever could see it. Now, ordinary people, I guess, could see it. I like the Kyroot. Nobody asked me, but the Kyroot tonight that a guy, a viewer, says that he believes that anybody who really wanted to could listen to this and think that way. And Kyroots pointed out, you be right, sort of. People just have no need to. It would take the fun. They just have no need to. That's not the way life is arranged. But consider, if it were important, which they're made to think it is, but if all of the disputes, the theoretical wranglings, the conflicts between schools of thought, between schools of economics, between schools of everything, schools in the lower S sense, that all of those conflicts amount to moot if you consider that all human institutions, all schools, the secondary world itself exists. We'll start off without analyzing it, but in two bases. One of them, it exists for the sake of itself, which it obviously does. Whatever its purpose is, if we're just talking about religion or academics or whatever, that it exists for itself, but it also exists for a reason that belies anything known to rational physical existence, and that is it exists for the sake also of protecting itself, which is why I drew out the parallel with the ants, because that is a fact. I mean, that's one of the few things I didn't make up in all of this. And so that makes sense, even though it's just surprising. It's not the kind of thing you run across, that, all right, here it is, that these ants are existing for themselves, whatever purpose they serve in the food chain, etc. But here they are, when they're hanging on together, and they've stopped for the night or for some period, and they're building this structure. In that particular instance, they're existing not only for themselves, whatever part they're playing in the great food chain, but now they're existing to contain themselves. They're not only themselves, they're the keeper of themselves. They are the container, the protector. They are the packaging of their own existence. And if you get any further than that, in fact, that's probably far enough for ordinary minds to go, what? But then consider everything that is the unique world of man. It is the same thing. Pick out anything you want to. And you find the heart, or you find the flaw, if you want to look at it this way. You find the weak point of all human criticism, which only comes from one human to another, of course. There is no outside criticism coming. That's why man had to make up the idea of God, so that, hey, there's somebody bigger than you and I criticizing ourselves, which seems to make ordinary humans feel better. Like, well, I thought I was just kind of, just a piece of shit, but I didn't know it was that. I wasn't sure of it. But you say God feels the same way. Oh, yes, it says so right here. And it seems, I don't know why, it seems to cheer people up, that they feel like, well, all right. At any rate, if we took, I was just picking religion again, as always being a great, well-known example, that any religion, but any institution, anything in the secondary world, consider it is existing not only for itself, which it is, for whatever purpose, the same way as ants, moss, oxygen, almost anything in the world except perhaps attorneys and bookkeepers and insurance sales. But everything exists for its own reason. It is serving as some link in the chains that hold everything together. But take religion. It is existing, or politics, remember, whatever, but it is existing not only for itself, but is existing for the purpose of containing itself. And if you can get your mind to get into being a three-fisted thinker, I'm sorry. You remember that, Kyroot, that a revolutionist is a two-fisted thinker who has three fists. So if you can get that far, you can take what I just said, and it does become revealing. That religion, for instance, specifically religions, local religions, individual denominations, and religion itself, exists not only for the sake of itself, but exists for the purpose, for the sake of containing itself. Now, if your mind, I'll grant you've got to get past being a two-fisted thinker to do that, but then when you see that, then nothing is open to any reasonable criticism whatsoever in the world. Because no matter what you look inside the bottle, and say, I don't like what's in that bottle. I don't care for Scotch. Or in this case, you look and say, I do not care for Catholics. All right, that's part of it. But part of it is the religion. The drink is not just the contents. Part of it is also the ant structure made up of itself. That it's existing not only for the sake of itself, but for the sake of containing itself. And once you see that, I mean, I hate to ruin your hobby, but I assume most of you got some other small hobby available, a fallback position. But once you see that, there is no possibility. You cannot criticize anything. I don't mean because of any sense of morality, no nothing. You just realize if I do that, they're going to make me the poster boy for idiocy. Just you personally. Nobody else would know it, but you would know it. Because whatever it is, no matter how far it may be removed from your particular wired up field of interest, no matter how it may conflict with any hardwired attitude you had toward whatever the subject was, politics, race, religion, anything. No matter what it is, once you realize that whatever purpose it's serving, which may strike you at the ordinary level as being insane, that I cannot understand how the people just across the border can be Protestants. I can't understand how they could be socialist when we have the right idea. All right, so you got that conflict, you got that basis for criticism, but then if you realize it exists not only for whatever purpose it's serving, but it also exists for the purpose of containing itself. Of course, there you've already taken out darn close to 100% of the human minds on this planet. They're going to go, hey. But even if you get that far, you have got a 50% reduction that fast in any reasonable, rational possibility of criticizing this other form of insanity. This other alternate form of some secondary behavior foreign to yours. So you have immediately got a 50% reduction. That is, whatever criticism, however justified and rational it is, half of it is shot. As soon as you realize, well, its purpose is not only to be what it is, but it's to contain what it is. Now that doesn't do a lot. If your mind was working a certain way, you could think it did. But that's why I said immediately. You've got an immediate 50% reduction, and if you did not go intellectually blind right then, if your little brain did not blow up, then you've got to go into being the three-fisted drinker. Because right past that, it's not a 50% reduction, it's an elimination. Because there's nothing left to criticize. That everything in the world is existing not only for the sake of itself, but for the sake of containing itself. What you end up with, to tie that into a few where I've been dragging you for the last few nights, is also, you've got then that in the world of destinations and journeys, then you've got this secondary journey has become, in a sense, like this ant structure, in that a secondary journey becomes both a means and an end. Not one or the other. And it is as though a destination, that this secondary journey has become both a destination and a journey. That it exists because of itself, for itself, and it exists to contain itself. Well, I tried to drag, if I failed, the ordinary term that everyone likes to do, from philosophers to bricklayers to drinkers, talking about the world of ends and means, and the great arguments that do means justify ends, and etc. But do you see, if the secondary journey is seen in the sense parallel to the ants creating a structure of themselves, for themselves, or if you want to start the other way, they create a structure for themselves, yes, made up of, yes, themselves. They're existing not only for the sake of existing, but they're also existing for the sake of containing, protecting, holding, containing their own existence. And if you can see it that way, then the secondary journey of life, the existence of a man at the intellectual level, then becomes a means and an end. It's not one or the other. It's not one leads to the other. It's not one causes the other. A city man said, dichotomies are more fun than anything. A few pages on, another man said, dichotomies are more fun than a barrel of monkeys. In fact, he added, they're more fun than 2 barrels of opposing monkeys. Close, but not enough cigar to award to a 3-fisted thinker. Because that would still be on the basis of the intellectual journey is either a means or it's an end. And ordinary minds, as I was pointing out last time, are already wired up to believe. They operate on the basis, not an adopted belief, but as I was explaining, they operate on the unexamined, unassailable assumption that whatever it's up to has the possibility of a destination, of an end. And it does not. It is the journey itself that is the secondary world, that is the intellectual world. But consider, it's not just some sort of vague theory, it's not just something I made up. I mean, even though I made it up, that's not the point. I didn't make up these ants, by God. You check with a National Geographic. We're talking about real shit, stuff here, science, not stuff I made up. These ants have this place in which they're living. They're spending the night. It's not a Marriott. It's this thing here, and they're living in it for the night. They knocked off work, and they're hanging out tonight. And where are they? They're in this ant thing. Yeah, but what do you mean? Well, it's this thing made up of ants. It's this thing made up of themselves. Now, I guess if they put this on, on paper and you saw a photograph of it or a little film clip on National Geographic, you look at it and you think, all right. But then close your eyes, turn away, look in your brain, and you think, it exists for its own sake, but it also exists to contain itself. And you think, boy, I wish I wasn't that allergic to aspirin. Jesus. Well, I'm just guessing what ordinary people would do. Ordinary people never go that far, but I'm just sort of assuming that's what they'd do if they were genteel at all. When they're not genteel and it goes that far, they normally get up and leave or go, God damn, what is this? Well, I guess we'll stop there since we're zero. Ground zero. And turn up, we're going, as we roll the credits, we'll do a little Wagner in the background.